This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. We've got another terrific video for you this week, and the theme of this video is going to be deception. And in my opinion, many women are ninjas of deception. Now, what do I mean by that? Some women are experts when it comes to their ability to conceal affairs from their partners. Many perceived good women out there are or have cheated in the past, and their partners may never know. That's what I'm referring to when I'm referring to ninjas of deception. And you're going to see that clearly illustrated in this week's story. Now let's get right to it. And you can see the title of this story is I Divorced My Wife of 27 Years After Reading Her Diary. And this posting, as you can see, was from January 16th of 2019. And this is told from the perspective of the woman. She says, I'm really struggling and need to hear the voices of others to hopefully help guide and lift me to a better place. I'm a 49-year-old female, call me Jan, and my husband is 50, call him Jerry. These are not our real names, and I plan on deleting this account after posting to preserve our privacy. Jerry and I have been happily married for 27 years, and I have two great kids, a son, age 26, and a daughter, 24. He was my first love and the only man I've ever truly loved. And I highlighted that, and I want you to think about that as we go through this story. She says, we've been a couple over 30 years, getting together when I was 18. I fell madly in love with Jerry, and he proposed to me after just 7 months. I accepted and was ready to marry him on the spot. He was in his second year of college, and I was working at a local hardware store franchise in our hometown. The plan was for us to remain engaged until he graduated and got a job before we would marry, and I think that's smart. I was fine with this, even though we wouldn't be married for nearly 3 years, as I loved Jerry so much and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. The college he attended is in the capital city of our state, which is a little over 2 hours from our hometown. He normally would come home nearly every weekend to be with me. However, there were weekends when he would just stay at school to study or if the weather was bad. On those weekends, we'd spend hours on the phone talking multiple times per day. Remember now, this is 30 years ago, so there were no smartphones, no texting, internet, etc. We talked on good old-fashioned landline phones. She says, ugh, I feel so old. About a year into our engagement, I started getting antsy. Now, why is she getting antsy? We're going to find out. And asked if we could get married now instead of waiting another 2 years until he graduated. I explained how much I wanted to be his wife and that getting married would give me peace of mind, as I was concerned he was going to meet another girl at school and drop me. And I put the word projection here after this statement because that's exactly what she's doing. She is insinuating that he is going to cheat on her. Meanwhile, next we're going to see what's actually on her mind and what she's going to do. She says Jerry promised that would never happen and professed his love. He explained by waiting we can ensure we are right for each other and would ensure we had financial resources to start a family, which makes perfect sense. Here's where I really messed up. Now here she goes. One of the regular customers at the hardware store was a guy, call him Jim, who was an electrician. He would generally be in to pick up supplies 2 to 3 times a week. We had a friendly relationship and always exchanged pleasantries when he checked out. After a while, he started flirting and making passes at me. I told him, sorry, I'm engaged. He told me he was too, but said he felt such a strong connection he'd be willing to risk it all for one chance. This on and off flirting went on for weeks. Then one weekend, when Jerry unexpectedly called to advise he'd have to stay at school for the next 2 weekends, I decided to go out with Jim. Now she's acting like, oh, this just happened on a spur, it just came across my mind and I did it. You know, and I know that this is something that she had been thinking about quite a while, and she was fond of this Jim. She says, we went on a couple of dates, and after our third date, I ended up in his bed. It's just like, oh, we went on a few dates, and then all of a sudden I'm sleeping with him. We met at Jim's apartment 3 additional times over the next 2 weeks while his fiancée was at work. I mean, that is just really grimy, dirty on both of their parts. They both have fiancés and they're hooking up behind their fiancés' backs. Disgusting. I know what you're all thinking about me now, and I agree with you. I think I temporarily lost my mind. When Jerry finally came home, I quickly came to my senses and immediately broke things off with Jim. Jim was crushed and cried, begging me to run off and elope. I hated breaking his heart, but I was firm, and I told him we need to forget this ever happened. I explained that we were both engaged and that Jerry was the love of my life. Jim and I parted ways. He stopped coming into the store, and I've never spoken to him in 29 years. Now, that's her story. We're not hearing from this Jim, so, we're just hearing her side of it. 2 months later, he married his fiancée, call her Susie. Then 19 months later, I married Jerry. Since that time, we've been happily married, and I truly mean that. We had a conventional marriage with Jerry being the provider, protector, and awesome father, and me being the keeper of the family, running the house, and being a doted SAHM, which stands for Stay at Home Mom. We loved our lives and had what most would say was the ideal marriage. This was all shattered 3 days ago due to my carelessness. Now realize this is like 28 years after she had this affair, and she's saying that her perfect marriage was shattered due to her carelessness. Well, I think, ma'am, it was due to your affair. Now let's move forward here. She says, so all through my teen years and right up until a year before I married Jerry, I kept a detailed diary. When I moved from my parents' house, I kept the diary in a cardboard box along with yearbooks and other keepsakes from school. We put this box and other similar boxes of memorabilia from our school years on a shelf in the basement of our home. And I think all of us out there probably have boxes like this in our basement or in a closet somewhere, with all that kind of memorabilia and stuff from your school years. Those boxes sat in that same place in our basement for over 25 years untouched. In fact, I completely forgot about the contents of the boxes and that my diary was in one of them. Then this past Saturday, Jerry decided he was going to clean up the basement and move all the stuff in those boxes into plastic storage bins. He was down in the basement all morning cleaning up. When he finally came upstairs, he didn't say anything and walked down the hall. I thought he was just tired and was going to take a shower. He went into the bathroom and stayed in there for a good 45 minutes. I checked on him and he said he was fine and was just reading. I soon found out what he was reading was my diary he found in one of the boxes. When he came out, he walked right over to me, holding up the diary, and said, "Look what I found." He had a disgusted and angry look on his face like I had never seen before. He then opens the diary and starts reading the pages that I wrote about Jim. I immediately told him to stop, and I could explain, but he just kept reading. I then started crying and asked him to please stop. He just kept reading, getting more and more agitated and louder as he read. When he finished, I started to speak and he cut me off, saying, "Go pack a bag." I asked him why, and he said, "You're going to your parents." I kept trying to explain, and he just very sternly repeated, "Go pack a bag." I didn't want to upset him further, so I went and started packing. Once I finished, I tried talking to him, and he just said, "Leave." I begged and got down on my knees, hugging his legs, and pleaded with him, but he just kept telling me, "Leave." By this point, his face was red, and veins were protruding from his forehead. I had never seen him so angry. He's always been a very cool and level-headed person. I left and drove to my parents. When I got there, I explained what happened. Now, that's surprising for many women because something like this that will make them look bad, normally they're going to try to keep under wraps. But I give her credit here. If what she's saying is true, she told her parents the truth. They were shocked and disappointed. My parents are both 81 years old and love Jerry like a son. Oh, that's right. She's 49. I was thinking 81 years old. But yeah, she's 49. So they had her when they were both 32, which that makes sense. She said, "I explained that what I did happened over 29 years ago, and I have always been faithful during our marriage." They were so upset they couldn't talk. I called and sent Jerry texts all night, but he never responded. The following morning, I got a call from my daughter, and she started yelling at me saying, "How could you do such a thing to Daddy?" She said her dad had a video call with her and her brother last night and sent them a file containing the key pages from my diary. I was embarrassed and started explaining to my daughter the situation, but she wasn't buying it, and she hung up. I then tried calling our son, but he didn't answer and didn't respond to my texts and voicemails. I also started calling Jerry, but he didn't answer. I then went over to our house and he wasn't there. I stayed at the house all afternoon, but he never returned, and I eventually went back to my parents' house. A little after 4 p.m., I got a call from Jim's wife, Susie. So this Jerry went totally nuclear, man. He went out and immediately told his kids and called the wife of his wife's affair partner, this Jim's wife. Susie started cursing me and calling me terrible names and told me I better make sure to stay out of her sight if I know what's good for me. I tried talking to her, but she too just hung up on me. Later that night, I got a call from a good friend who said Jerry was at a popular bar in town and was telling everyone about the affair. I was devastated, as this wasn't like Jerry at all. According to her, he appeared drunk and not himself. This really concerned me, as he generally does not drink, having maybe 2 or 3 drinks a year. I was worried sick and started calling and texting, but he didn't respond. I went back to the house and decided to wait for Jerry to return, and at a little after 9 p.m., a friend of his dropped him off in our driveway. When he came through the door, I just grabbed him and hugged him. At first, he didn't respond, but eventually he started hugging me back and we talked. He smelled of alcohol and was crying, asking, "How could you do this to me?" I said how sorry I was and told him it was a huge mistake and that it was nearly 30 years ago. He said our life has been built on a lie. He went on to say what a fool he was and how angry he felt being cucked by a loser of a man and a C word of a wife. And you know what the C word is. After saying this, he became very agitated again and ordered me to leave. I told him I wanted to stay as I was worried about him. He calmly asked me to leave and give him a week to think before coming back home. I begged him to stay, but eventually left crying. Over the next week, I sent him daily texts saying how sorry I was and how much I loved him, but he never replied. I heard from several friends that he and Susie were seen out having drinks multiple nights during this time. I don't know if they were just meeting to share information or were having a revenge affair. All I know is that I feel beyond terrible for what I did to Jerry. I heard that Susie kicked Jim out and was planning to divorce him. He's crushed and emotionally destroyed. There have been rumors that Susie has been cheating on him for years, and the person who told me said she thinks she's just using the diary as an excuse to divorce him. Our town has 3,600 people, and nearly everyone now knows about the affair thanks to Jerry and Susie. The feedback I'm getting is that most people feel Jim and I are disgusting POSs, but should be forgiven since all this happened nearly 30 years ago. For now, I'm back at my parents' house waiting to return home next week to be with Jerry. I understand his pain, but I think he's overreacting. I hope over the next week he will come to his senses and we can both heal. What recommendations do you have for how to best handle this situation? So she's asking the community what recommendations they have. She says, I know what I did was awful, but I feel Jerry has completely overreacted. The affair happened nearly 30 years ago, and since that time, we've had a beautiful marriage and family. He feels our life was built on a lie, which it wasn't. What do you think of this? Thank you for letting me vent. So that was her original post. And now, here are some of the responses she got from the community. And I picked out 2 responses from men and 2 responses from women, just to give you kind of a sample of, what she was hearing. This first one is from a woman, and this woman is laying it out to her. She says, sorry, Jan, you are not going to get any sympathy from me. An engagement is a commitment just like marriage, and you cheated and lied to your fiancé. I agree with him that your entire relationship has been built on a lie. The only thing you can do now is apologize and give him space. I wish you luck. Now here's another woman. She says, your husband is a disgusting man-child with anger issues. I would give him an ultimatum. Either he knocks off the ridiculous behavior or you'll divorce him and take him to the cleaners. You've apologized multiple times and he's still acting like a spoiled brat. This is all a result of the conventional marriage you bragged about. Stop being subservient. So you can see this woman is someone who I guarantee is a member of the movement, the big movement that begins with an F that I call the FU men movement. This woman is someone who sounds like she's definitely a member of that tribe. Now, here's a couple of responses from men. The first one is a softer guy. He says, I can understand why your husband is so upset, but I hope he eventually focuses on the wonderful 27 plus years you've spent together instead of obsessing over your brief affair. The best thing you can do at this point is just give him time to heal and be there for him when he's ready to talk. I hope things work out for you. And then finally, here's a guy that's taking a much more hardline approach. He says, my husband was overreacting? Really? You had raw S with a guy for 2 weeks while you were engaged and claimed to have never spoken to that man again? Come on. No one believes that. I bet you've been betting him on and off for the past 29 years. If I was your husband, I'd DNA test the kids and divorce your nasty Okay, so this guy's taking a much more hard line approach. as you can see. Now, we're at a point in the story where I want to encourage you, if you're liking what you hear, hit that like button, because that will move this great video up on the YouTube algorithm and get it seen by people all over the world. Now, on with our story. Now, here's a series of updates that she has. The first one is from January 20th. She said, "First, I want to thank everyone for their feedback. It really has been helpful. I took the advice of many and told my husband to take as much time as he needs and that I'll be here for him when he's ready to talk. It's been a few days and I've not heard from him, but mutual friends of ours have seen him and said he looks fine. Next, I want to make it clear that I have never met with or spoke to Jim again after we ended our affair, nor have I cheated on my husband with anyone else. I can honestly say that nothing like that has ever crossed my mind, and I have been completely faithful for our entire marriage. The only time I strayed was with Jim during that foolish 2-week period. Finally, my relationship with my kids is strained right now. My daughter is especially cruel. Out of the blue, she decided to order ancestry kits for the family. She called and asked sarcastically if there was anything I wanted to disclose before she placed the order. I told her of course not, and I was looking forward to the results. She says, "That's all I have for now. I'll update next week when I'm back home." So, here's her next update, and it's actually from a couple weeks later. She said, "I want to provide everyone with an update. I'm back living at my house with my husband, but we're now legally separated. I'm devastated," she says with a frowny face. "When I came back home, Jerry presented me with separation papers and said he moved all my belongings into the spare bedroom. He also put a keyed lock on our master so I cannot enter. He's moved our son's old dorm refrigerator into our master bedroom, along with a cupboard for storing food and a coffee machine. Now I only see him when he's coming and going from work or whenever he goes off or wherever he goes off to at night. He's also doing all his own cooking, cleaning, and laundry and says we will be living as roommates for the time being with no commitments. He's still meeting with Susie and refuses to stop seeing her. When I ask him what's going on, he ignores me or says, I'm keeping a journal and will tell you all about it in 30 years. So he's really ribbing her there, over what she did. He's also told me several times when I try to initiate to go F Jim if I need to get some. I still can't believe what's happened. It's like he's thrown our love away and now hates me. I'm so broken. According to a good friend of mine, her husband told her that Jerry was drinking at a table with a group of guys yesterday at a local social club we all belong to. Jim was also there and came up to Jerry and asked to talk in private. Jerry ignored him, and Jim pleaded and apparently started crying and begging Jerry in desperation. According to reports, Jerry told him to go F himself and warned him he'd better stay out of sight unless he wants trouble. Hearing this terrified me, as Jerry has never been mean or violent in any way. I'm concerned something has changed in him mentally, as he's no longer the kind man I've known and loved for 30 years. For now, I'm just going along with Jerry's wishes and told him that I'll be right here when he's ready to talk. I'm thinking about getting a little job to take my mind off things, as there's little for me to do all day now that Jerry's doing everything himself. That's all I have to update for now. I'll update again if something comes up. Thank you for your well wishes and blessings." And now for her final update. Now this was on October 28th, so this is like 9, almost 10 months later. She said, I wanted to come back and give an update on my situation. I owe it to you after all the great feedback I've gotten during this past year. Things are really bad for me. Jerry and I are now divorced, and I'm now completely alone. As I said in my last update, we were living separately in our house, and I was doing everything to reconcile. We did this for 2 months, and I thought things were getting better. Then one day, Jerry came to me one day and asked to talk. The anger had gone from him at this point, and he was somber and sad. What he said to me next crushed my soul. He said he no longer loves me romantically and wants a divorce. He then apologized for being so difficult over the past few months. I pleaded and begged him for days, but his mind was made up. He explained he cannot forget the cheating and the lying and can't get the thought of me and Jim out of his head. Next, he told me that he had put in a transfer to the Tampa office and would be moving to be close to his parents, who are in Sarasota, and our daughter, who's in Orlando, and our son, who's in Atlanta. This news absolutely crushed me. To cope, I've been in therapy 3 times a week, and it's helping. My therapist explained that discovering the affair has completely changed my husband, and he is no longer the same person and views me differently. She said that I need to mourn the loss as if Jerry passed away, because the man I loved is gone forever and cannot be brought back. And she has a big frowny face there. And that is a true statement, because what she did to this guy by cheating on him, even though it's 30 years ago, and lying to him, in his mind, he is thinking, I married someone who is totally different than what I thought. This woman is a cheater. This woman is a liar. I can't trust her. And I've been made a fool of in this town by having this guy who was banging my wife before we were married. So he's just thinking, man, my whole world has been crushed. While my kids were angry at me at first, they are now very upset about our divorce. They thought their dad would just be upset for a while and would then make up with me. They both have come home to visit and tried getting us to reconcile, but again, for Jerry, that ship had already sailed. My parents are just sad and depressed by all of this. As stated before, Jerry was like a son, and he did a lot for them. I'm trying to convince them to move down to Florida, but they want nothing of it. They insist on staying in our hometown, even though most of their friends have passed away. I'm going to keep working on them, as I'd feel so much better living near my kids and Jerry. On the plus side, now listen to this. I'm going to Atlanta to visit my son and to Orlando to visit my daughter for the holidays, and we'll be gone for 2 months. While there, I was also planning to visit my former in-laws in Sarasota. When Jerry found out, he called and invited me to stay at his new place outside Tampa. This was totally unexpected, and I, of course, immediately took him up on his offer. I'm hoping this will be an opportunity for us to reconcile. I know he loves me and misses me terribly, as my daughter and son both told me he does. I just think he needed to get away from this town and the bad memories and punish me by having an affair and divorcing. Now that he has, I think he realizes our love is everlasting and we were meant to be together. As for Jim and Susie, they too are divorced. I heard Susie was very upset that Jerry moved, as they had grown close and he helped her through her divorce. She claims they were only friends, and Jerry has never admitted anything. But I heard they had a passionate affair for several months prior to Jerry moving, and she's already visited him in Florida. This really hurts bad, she says. If having an affair was what Jerry needed to get it out of his system and heal, I guess I'm okay with it. I feel so much regret for my stupid affair and also feel so dumb for not destroying that damn diary when I had the chance to do so 29 years ago. I actually thought about shredding it back then, but decided to keep it. Shaking my head and kicking myself, she says. That's my final update. Thanks again, Jan. So that's her story. And there's going to be, I think, two camps of people on this story. You're going to have one camp that's going to say, man, that was 29 years ago. Your wife has been a good woman to you. She produced great kids for you. You've had a wonderful life. Forgive her and move on. Then there's going to be another camp out there that's going to say, she totally disrespected you. She's a cheater. She cheated on you behind your back, and she's lied for all these years, and your whole relationship is built on a lie. Now, my take on this, if it were me, I would have done pretty much the same thing he's done here. I would have divorced her. I would have remained very civil to her because of what she had been prior to me finding this out. You know, she's been a good wife. She's been a loyal wife. But again, the aspect of her cheating, I don't care if it was 5 days ago or 15 years ago, or in this case, 29 years ago, it's still cheating and lying. And that says a lot about her character. And because she did that, you no longer have any trust for her, regardless of what she says or regardless of how she tries to convince you. So that's me. That's what I would have done. Now, would I have had an affair with this Jim's wife? Probably not. I know it sounds salacious and passionate to do that, and it's the best revenge you can get against him. But in reality, it really doesn't do much to help you move forward. Because what he's got to be thinking in his mind now is, let me make the most of my life that I have left. Don't go back and try to right previous wrongs by cheating. Because again, if you're with a toxic person, you know, his wife being toxic, being a cheater, and her affair partner being a cheater, well, now that's turned him into a cheater now. And I'm sure that's not part of his character. So again, if it were me, I would have divorced, moved forward, been civil to my wife, kept a friendly relationship with her, but I would have moved forward with my life in Florida. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in this situation if you were Jerry? Would you have handled it the way he handled it? Or would you have done something else? Would you have forgiven her and just moved forward? Let me know your comments. Also, hit that like button. If you enjoyed this video, it will move it up on the YouTube algorithm and get it seen across the globe. Share it with your friends, and please subscribe to this great channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.